So Joe, have you heard whisperings online about Art of War? I've heard a few little mumblings, some complaints here and there. Some people think the card is a little bit broken in Fi, and that's what I want to talk about today. Does Art of War need to be banned?
I would say no, but I definitely think that there's weird shenanigans that go on with Fi that may have been not overlooked, but ignored when they were in the development process, just because I don't think they thought a lot of the downsides to Fi or things he doesn't want to do anyways, like blocking and stuff like that. So then Art of War sliding into that just kind of boosts a lot of that consistency to make it more consistent and more deadly, which definitely hurts a lot when you're playing against it, especially when you have it happen multiple turns in a row.
I actually disagree. I think Art of War will need to be banned. However, I think it'll need to be banned in the future and in the Living Legends format. When I look at Art of War and I read that there's 4 effects, like just the extra amount of design space in the abilities that the card gets to do, that something down the line might be able to abuse it in a way that we haven't seen possible. A hero that I like to think of is Chain, where Chain benefits from banishing a card and then drawing 2. You're basically just drawing 2 cards, because if you banish a Blood Debt, you can just play it from your Vanish Zone. I think Classic Constructed will be more okay with this card because there's going to be less heroes. There's going to be less of a card pool because of less heroes, and so I think they might be able to manage it. But I think in Living Legends, when you just have 5-10 years down the line and there's just tons of cards, I just something about this card tells me it may end up being broken one day.
I definitely feel salty like when I'm playing against Fis and they play that card, because it's like, it's the same feeling as when people play C&C or even to an extent E-Strike on some parts, where it's like these cards are so well above costs that it feels so like, oh wow, like good job, you drew that $150 card or whatever you're gonna slap down. Like it sucks, but luckily with those cards it's just one and done. With this one it's like, oh, it keeps going and going and going with Fi. But with that said, I think like if this card was to be banned, it would have probably more so been banned when Chain was a thing. Because when the downsides of this card are literally banishing that card, which is just an upside to Chain, there's no negatives to the card. Like I've even had this happen where I'm playing against a Fi, they banish a card, they draw 2 cards, and those 2 cards are cards that they can't really play. Like, it's still a luck game with that, whereas with Chain, it's literally like you are controlling the whole entire card.
I do agree that Chain probably abused it maybe a little bit more, or at least had the potential to, and I think as the card pool expands for every hero as well, like if Fi just gets more ways to use it, or if like Katsu, the Crouching Tiger, if they start to adopt Art of War and can go very wide, it's gonna be...
They seem to be using it.
These are the things where I think the card can very well become broken. I like to look at the future of the game and the potential that cards have. The more abilities a card has, the more of a red flag that sends to me, unless all of those abilities are complete garbage, which, I mean, none of these actually are bad.
I've always had an issue with just like cards with multiple abilities anyways, just because they're, I don't know, just make one card multiple cards with similar abilities.
I don't mind a couple abilities. I think some cards kind of need it. Obviously, you have like your keyword, maybe like Dominate.
Well, I don't mean multiple abilities as in like a choice of multiple abilities, because
yeah.
that's when you get into problems with synergies and stuff like that. You never know, there might be a hero who has an ability that's like choose all the choices when you make a choice on a card or something, and maybe all their cards have multiple choices on them and like things like that. Now he plays that and it's like, well, I just get a bunch of stuff for free. I'm not saying that's gonna happen, I'm just saying like something that is gonna eventually cause these abilities to synergize in the wrong ways.
It's kind of sad though, because there are heroes like Lexi that really rely on it to get that extra damage and to get that draw, and when you have heroes that are a little less consistent, it's nice to have these generic cards to be able to use. And it's also a fun card to mess around with and try to make work in weird builds. It's the heroes that can abuse it and break it. Like if we're gonna be having these wicked go wide strategies, then eventually the worse that gets, the more they can go wide, the better Art of War gets. One thing I wanted to mention, in lieu of bans, do you think that they should ever get to the point where maybe they limit cards to 1 copy? They basically give it the legendary rule?
I think they should suspend cards for heroes. Down the line when there's like 30 plus heroes, let's say, that'll be harder to manage when it's like, that's banning this guy, oh wait, no, but that's banning this. It keeps it at least a little more safe, rather than just limiting a card to legendary when it doesn't have that keyword, because then it undermines that keyword.
Obviously for Classic Constructed, they're going to keep with the suspending along with the hero until they're gone, because if it's just one hero that's breaking it, it's okay, well, we'll get rid of it while he's here. Once the hero's gone, it can come back. In the Living Legends format though, I could see the inevitability of them saying, well, we don't want Art of War gone completely because it's a good card and we want people to be able to use it, but maybe because I'm coming mostly from Yu-Gi-Oh here, where they do that. They limit cards, because Art of War is not broken if there's only one copy. You save it for that one huge turn, and that's great, but you don't get to just do it the next turn because you lucked into drawing it, and then do it again. It's like, I've had that happen.
I could definitely come around to the idea of it being a problem in the future. Like, I 100% will agree that, like, the amount of abilities on it will cause that to be something that I think is almost inevitable. It will happen.
A card that I've thought is quite similar to is almost like Plunder Run, where Plunder Run on its own wasn't really actually that broken up until we got Go Wide heroes like Briar, who could suddenly abuse the power of the card, and now it's like, okay, now the card's a problem. Or like Stubby Hammerers, they had to get rid of that card because of 5, because of the Go Wide. So it's like they already recognize it. I hope that Art of War doesn't go, because I do like the card. I don't think it needs to go right now. I think it's fine, but I do see someday in the future the card becoming a problem with how big the card pool is going to get.
When you get into the expensive Majestics as well, it's a shitty thing to think about that you could possibly ban a card that someone just bought 3 of.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, like, that is a huge downside. It's the same with reprints. You don't want to reprint cards into the ground if they're already expensive, because the people who are willing to buy them are your most hardcore fans, and you don't want to screw those people over, but you also want your cards to be reasonably priced. I guess at the end here, we can say, as much as we hate 5, and as much as we hate basing Art of War, I think we're both in agreement it doesn't need to be banned, but possibly someday down the line.
I'd say so, yeah.
Okay. So, all the people complaining about Art of War, suck it up. Huge thank you to all of my supporters. If you'd like to join the Chad Army, you can either become a channel member or join my Patreon with the link in the description. And if it's cards you want, you can use my affiliate link to Red Riot Games to help support me as well.